The Jaufenpass in the Italian Alps is the ideal launching pad for the Lamborghini Countach. It's like a cross between a car and a spaceship. Its market premiere in 1973 triggered an earthquake in the sports car industry. The design took everything to the extreme.
Lambo, Lambo, Lambo.
Test driver Christoph Bauer says he's dreamed of driving a Lamborghini Countach since he was a child. In the early 70s, it was the fastest car on the road, with a top speed of 300 kilometres and a V12 engine with 375 horsepower. 0 to 100 takes under 6 seconds, but the gas pedal's not that sensitive, he says. So, a typical racing car. You need a firm hold on the wheel and a heavy foot on the gas. At 3,000 revs, it starts to wake up, he says. At 4,000, it starts to roar. And upwards of 5,500, all hell breaks loose. The Countach is definitely a looker. Just 1.07 metres high, it guarantees to turn heads. The fastest way to draw a crowd is to have the Countach spread its wings. The only concession to the driver is the air conditioning. There are a few other creature comforts. The V12 4-litre engine steals the show. When the revs tip 8,000, the Countach hits its limit of 375 horsepower, but the car never reaches its top speed of 300 kilometres. But in 1974, 288 kilometres an hour was enough for it to be called the fastest car on the road. Christoph Bauer says it's a good thing the air conditioning works so well because the windows don't. They only open a crack, he says. There's not much luxury here generally. The dashboard fittings look like they've been bought up at a local accessory shop. But then the Countach has its strengths elsewhere, he says.
Zubehörartikelladen, edel ist was anderes. Aber gut, bei diesem Auto kommt es auch auf andere Werte an.
Designer Marcello Gandini said he wanted to create a car that would cause onlookers to stand open-mouthed.
Also dieses Auto.
Christoph says the car is the ultimate challenge. He thinks his left leg will be aching tomorrow from working the clutch. Inside, the car's not so wonderful, he says, but outside, it's a sensation. The Bertone Design Studio really created something unparalleled, especially when you think the car was unveiled in 1971, he says. Production started in 1973 and continued until 1990, and it still looks futuristic today. Someone just asked him in the car park if this is the latest Lambo. He says, Marcello Gandini was definitely ahead of his time. And the engine was the first to be installed longitudinally, he says, which is now standard for all Italian super sports cars. And the engine doesn't just look good, he says, it sounds sensational.
Dieser Motor ist nicht nur wunderschön, er klingt auch sensationell.
12-cylinder engines are a long-standing tradition at Lamborghini. In 1964, the Gran Turismo 350 GT was the first to take the road with its 270 horsepower. Overnight, the Lamborghini legend was born. In 1966, the Lamborghini Miura followed. It had a mid-engine layout which set a new trend for future super sports cars. The Miura is still considered one of the most beautiful sports cars of all time. The extreme wedge-like shape of the Countach, on the other hand, came as quite a shock, particularly the final series with its conspicuous vents for cooling the engine. With just 2 protruding cooler vents, the flowing lines of the first Countach series were definitely more harmonious. After the first test drives, the radiators located behind the cockpit had to be repositioned vertically. That was the only way to keep the temperature of the engine, which was positioned in front of the rear axle, under control. When it came to fuel consumption, the engineers were less fussy. The 12-cylinder engine with its 6 Weber carburetors is a real guzzler. Christoph says any Countach driver will be a regular at the local gas station, as the car consumes at least 20 litres and can use a whole lot more. But the good thing, he says, is that you can fill it up from both sides. The two tanks are linked with a fuel equaliser. But the process takes forever, he says.
Aber bis dieser Ausgleich stattgefunden hat, vergehen Jahre.
The car requires premium-grade gasoline and holds a total of 120 litres of fuel in all, so filling up the car on both sides at the same time doesn't just look good, it saves a lot of time. The twin tanks help to balance the car and keep its centre of gravity stable. Thanks to the aluminium bodywork, the Countach only weighs 1,375 kilos, which together with the racing car chassis means it handles well on bends. It'd be no good for people with a high-rise hairstyle, says Christoph. In fact, everything's a bit cramped. That's the disadvantage of a mid-engine layout, he says. You have to share the space with the engine, transmission, all the mechanical parts, but it's definitely wide, not so ideal for narrow mountain roads. Better for the highway, but great on bends, he says. The car's greatest weakness, zero rear-view visibility, is also less of a problem on the highway.
Jawohl, ja, das ist Musik. Lambo, Lambo, Lambo.
It's hardly surprising that the Countach is considered another milestone in the collection at the Zeithaus Classic Car Museum in Wolfsburg.